Welcome, everybody. This webinar is using cloud analytics to optimize merchandise mix at Veronica Beard. Thank you all for joining on time. You can see that some of the attendees are still trickling in, so we're going to begin in just a couple more moments. So as you're getting settled here, feel free to familiarize yourself with the GoToWebinar control panel. There is a questions panel where you can ask anything that you like as we go, and we'll be able to circle back and address some of those Q&As either on the fly in the chat box, or we can actually handle them live with Veronica Beard and Sigma. So we'll begin in just a moment. All right, looks like the number of attendees is plateauing here, so we can begin. So again, welcome to Cloud Analytics to optimize merchandise mix at Veronica Beard. I'll be your moderator today. I'll be available in the questions chat within GoToWebinar. Feel free to ask anything as we go. You can address it on the fly and also circle back in our Q&A. This session will be recorded. You'll receive the recording in an email afterwards. So if you miss anything, if you get up at any moment or you want to share it within your organization, you'll have the full recording afterwards. And what we have today is a tight agenda plan for you. So we'll begin with introductions for who is on the line. We'll introduce you to Veronica Beard, the brand, and we'll have a fireside chat, which is actually going to be hosted partially from Sigma's new New York City office, where fireplaces are still being installed. But we will have a fireside chat with Veronica Beard and then follow that up with a live demo and Q&A from the actual GoToWebinar chat. So for introductions, my name is Zack Norton. I will be your moderator. I'll be in the Q&A, and I'll be demoing a little bit later. I'm joined by Jayanth Mysore, our VP of Product at Sigma Computing, as well as Maxime Legrel. He's the Associate Director of Data at Veronica Beard, and importantly, a Sigma customer. So Max, at this point, I can actually hand it over to you, and we'll actually begin the customer spotlight and fireside chat for Veronica Beard.
Thank you so much, Zach. Max, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the audiences?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the intro. Very happy to be chatting with you guys. So I'm Max, as Zach mentioned, and I'm the Associate Director of Data at Veronica Beard. So it's a company that I joined about 2 years ago, and I was their first data hire. So Veronica Beard, we are like a high-end fashion brand designed for everyday life. And it's been founded in 2010, so already 12 years ago, by two sisters-in-law, so Veronica Swenson Beard and Veronica Beard. So yeah, that's kind of for a bit of context, and I can speak a bit more if you want for like maybe the Veronica Beard, but basically we have currently 3 sales channels. So we have the wholesale business, and then we have what we call the direct to consumer, which is split in two between our like e-com business and our retail business.
Thank you so much for that, Max. Hello to everyone. My name is Jayanth Mysore. I'm the VP of Product here at Sigma. It's going to be awesome to talk to all of you and with Max here. So Max, thanks for taking the time again and giving us that brief background on Veronica Beard itself. So why don't we just double click a little bit? You just said that Veronica Beard has 3 channels, right? You have online, you have retail stores, and you have wholesale. So what's the importance of the whole omni-channel experience at Veronica?
Yeah, so it's a very, I would say, very important part of our business, and something that actually really brought the importance of actually building our own data infrastructure internally. That's because, so as I mentioned, Veronica Beard was created in 2010. We only started working on the data infrastructure when I joined 2 years ago. So for 10 years, it's obviously totally possible to grow a business without proper data infrastructure. but it comes with some limitation. And the main limitation was this omni-channel part of the business. So just let's say before we started working with that data infrastructure, Veronica Beard was mainly pretty much like 3 siloed entities. So there was the wholesale that was working on their own with their own systems. Then the retail business was working also on their own with their own systems, and then the e-com. And question that were really, really hard to answer at the time was like trying to understand the value of our omni customer, right? This customer that purchase both offline and online. These are very critical sort of question to be able to answer when you are like an omni business. And that's kind of where we sort of started with that concept of building a data infrastructure so we have an omni-channel view of our customers.
That's great, and I'm sure that the whole pandemic situation must have shifted a lot of the purchase patterns in your customers, being in retail. We'll get into that in due course of time in this discussion. It was very interesting. So, what was the challenge at Veronica Beard that brought you to the company? What was the big problem? You already gave an indication that from the company's perspective, developing this omni-channel understanding was a priority for them. But for you as a leading data practitioner, what was the technical challenge or the infrastructure challenge that brought you there?
Yeah, so actually the first being the first data hire when I joined, my first mission at the time was really helping them with like implementing our customer data platform. So we're using Segment for that, and I had prior experience implementing Segment. So they sort of reached out to me and like we got hired to help them with that implementation. But very quickly after, that was only the very first step, I would say, of like building a data infrastructure. But after that, it became a much bigger project, which was let's build a proper data infrastructure based on the modern data stack. And beyond just this, so omni-channel and having an omni visibility of our customer was, as I mentioned, a critical aspect and reason why we started this project. The second one I would say is like, obviously building this single source of truth for the business across departments. As I mentioned, right, when you have like different departments working a bit in silo, it's really hard to have this single source of truth when it comes to like the key KPIs and metrics such as net sales, etc., and have a quick and easy way to have this visibility. So that's kind of been the two main focus on why we started building the data infrastructure.
So very interesting. So creating this omni-channel view of the customer and building out an entire modern data stack, starting with a customer data platform to bring all of these different silos of data together across not just understanding the customer for its own stake, but also for marketing, for merchandising, all of the different functions. That understanding was useful, I guess. Great. So now let's then go into the data journey itself. So walk us through sort of when you came into Veronica Beard, what were these kind of siloed systems? What did they look like? And how have you evolved it from there to what it is today?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I joined Veronica Beard, it was a very standard sort of retail business where the retail industry in general, I'd say, is very common that they do not yet have a data warehouse, cloud data warehouse. But usually what they do is like they extract data from the systems, and then they are all very like power user of Excel. Like all my business stakeholders are very, very power Excel users. And that's kind of when I joined, for the reason I just told you around like building this omnichannel and single source of truth across departments, we kick off the data infrastructure project. I would say the chance, and I don't know if it's a chance or not a chance, but what I personally like is that the fact that I could start from scratch, right? As opposed to sometimes when you have like a lot of legacy systems, which might make things a bit trickier. I was able to start from scratch. So obviously I really wanted to build like a so-called modern data stack, right? I think it makes things so much easier and faster to get up and running. So we started, as I said, with like the customer data platform implementation segment. Very quickly after, that's when we started implementing 5-chain for like extraction of our data, and then we have BigQuery currently as our cloud data warehouse. And we started with you guys Sigma very quickly, shortly after. And then obviously for our transformation, we're also using dbt. So using all these sort of modern tools has really helped us in getting up and running very quickly. I was, for the past year and a half, just myself internally. We got the support from a data agency, Montreal Analytics, I can mention, and now we're also supported by other agencies. But yeah, it's been a very a great journey, I would say. In general, I really enjoy it.
So your cloud data warehouse is BigQuery. You're using Segment as your CDP platform. You're using dbt, Fivetran as your EL platform, and Transforms in dbt, of course. And of course, your layer for getting insights and doing analysis is Sigma. Given that you have a past background with many other BI tools as well, Looker, so on and so forth, what drove your decision towards Sigma?
Yeah, so in general, I like to see, I would say in general, like BI tools, they all have pros and cons, right? Like it's just as any tool in general, not only BI tool, as I guess any software, you have pros and cons when you start comparing with like competition. I came from I've been using Looker a lot in my past life, and also had experience with other BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, and so on. We definitely considered like using Looker, for instance, as part of like the exploration we had with BI tools. It's just that, putting into context, I think probably one of the biggest strengths of like, let's say, a Looker tool is probably like their robustness, right? It's been built with like, they have built their own Looker model, so it's very robust. But putting it back to when we were like 2 years ago, we were just starting a full data infrastructure. It's really not, I felt like the right fit for us, because I wanted a tool that's very agile, and where you can sort of ramp up and be very quick at like exploring your data, building your different reports, and just also having the ability for like your business stakeholders to get hands-on and build their own reports as well. And I think Looker, again, their robustness is definitely a strength for them, but I think there is quite a learning curve for any business stakeholders, I feel, to get familiar with it, and also especially get hands-on. At least that's what I've seen in my past life. And yeah, that's when I got introduced to Sigma, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but I can share all the good things that we had experience with Sigma.
Sure. Thanks for that. Thanks for clarifying and providing that background to how you went about making that decision. Yeah, at Sigma, we do try to build the products to make sure that they are a product, to make sure that it is simple to set up, flexible, and fast to work with. And we target users in lines of business to be able to do the analysis on their own. And of course, we make it such that, people in the data team can build reports as well. So I'm glad that it worked out well for you guys. So now shifting gears a little bit, right? Can you walk us through sort of who within the company uses Sigma, like which functions use the product, who are your primary internal customers? Maybe you can even shed some light on how the deployment works, meaning who builds the reports, who uses these reports, who does analysis, that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. So I think the way we've approached our journey in building our data infrastructure, it's very much been focused first for like the e-com business units, and then so right now we have like fully onboarded. We have the e-com business, the e-com department, the CRM department, the marketing department, the planning, and the retail. That the 5 departments that are where I would say like Sigma, and beyond Sigma, our cloud data warehouse is the single source of truth for the data. And then we're continuously onboarding more departments. Right now, the departments that we're very much focused on is the wholesale department, because it's a bit more challenging to get the wholesale data. We don't have as much first-party data than like we get with the D2C, e-com, and retail. But yeah, we have more and more department constantly onboarding. But within each department also, we have different level of users. So how it works is we have like what we consider our power users that are very much like, comfortable getting into Sigma, building their own report. And then we have like it's called an explorer in Sigma, and that those are users that do not necessarily feel like they're gonna build the reports, but they still constantly log in, check the reports, explore, drill down in the data. That's the second level, and then the third level of users are just the viewers basically, and those are users that I would say more like passively use the Sigma as just like to look at the data, or even some of them simply just we have a bunch of like schedule reports, right, that are being sent every morning. So company-wide, for instance, we have a very critical report that's called the daily flash sale. And that's a report that gets sent every morning across the company for every business stakeholders to have a visibility toward like our sales performance for e-com for each of our stores based on daily, week to date, month to date, quarter to date, and year to date.
It's actually really nice and interesting to note that you have users in the line of business directly building reports in Sigma. Somebody with Sigma, it's very gratifying to know that, because that's kind of one of the reasons that we built the product, to enable that sort of access to everybody. Can you provide the audience some clarity into sort of what you provide these users with for them to get started with their analysis, or do they connect directly to the data warehouse and start doing the analysis? How does it work?
Yeah, so the way we work is, so we have a data team internally. So just for like providing a bit more context to the audience here, but I would say the retail industry, e-com is very common when it comes to like our data infrastructure. We are working following the Kimball methodology with our star schema. So we have a couple of fact tables, and then we have all our like dimension tables. So that's mainly the output that we get from our data warehouse and our dbt transformation. We have already some like tables that we've built on top of this that already join a few like this fact table and dimension table, but I would say that's usually the entry point in Sigma, and from there we have the data team usually that has we have already created like join the key tables. So obviously, as you can imagine in retail, what's important is having like, you want to join your sales, so your fact sales table, like order line, we call that, with like your store, right, with your SKU, and so on. Like we have a bunch of dimension table. So we do this join usually, and then we add that into a workbook, and our power users. So when it comes to like the CRM, or like the planning team, the e-com, marketing, retail, the power users in those departments, they actually take this like raw data that we've created where the table are already joined, and from there that's where they start like doing their own like analysis or building their own report, depending obviously on what they need, but they can break down. So let's say to give a clear concrete example, the CRM team is very much focused on the customer, right? Figuring out the customer value. So they're gonna build report like what's the value of our e-com customer compared to retail customer compared to omni customer. So they'll do this LTV analysis by like acquisition type or current like status of the customer, etc. Planning is going to be more around the merchandising mix, as we're going to discuss, I'm sure. Then same for like the e-com and so on.
Great, thank you so much. Now, just getting to a little bit deeper into the business end of the users, right? You already provided some visibility into the sorts of analysis the different teams do. Let's kind of deep dive into the planning team a little bit, right? The planning and merchandising team. What are the typical analysis, or what are the typical types of questions they're trying to answer for which they use Sigma?
Yeah, I think the I mean, when it comes to like our planning team, and I would say I could also include our merchandising team, like e-com merchandising team and overall merchandising team. Critical question for them is really understanding. I mean, part of the role, right, is to plan for like the inventory that we need, right, in the future, and obviously looking at what we've sold historically. And so what's very common in their world is to look at, like the gross like demand and also the net sales by SKU, and also SKU is the most granular level, right? But usually what they look at is even a bit higher, but they're gonna look at how is our like department or class collection, like, so let's say our jacket class, right, for instance, how is it performing year over year? So you always want to compare year over year. How is it performing in net sales? What's the sell through as well? That's a very critical metric. So we need like to combine both the sales and the inventory data. And then you also want to compare something very important in our like world is like looking at sell through by like markdown. So whether it's a full price or like like 30%, 50% off, 70% off, because retail business is very seasonal business, right? So year over year you have the same sort of markdown cadence. So this is something very critical, and then also be able to compare by store as well. So I think what's very important in general, if we just step back, is for those departments, it's really about having an easy and quick way to break down these key metrics that I mentioned, like obviously the net sales and sell through and units and all these like key metrics. Having the ability to break down by store or by geography or by class, by department, all this like critical business where you can constantly keep drilling down and comparing how you're performing compared to last year.
So it looks like it's highly dimensioned data and lots of levels of aggregation and being able to compare year over year or period over period, primarily driven towards making sure that you have the right SKUs in the right places to make sure that you don't turn off a customer that's willing to pay and buy something, right? It looks like
that's exactly that. Yeah.
Critical function. Just so that the audience has an appreciation for how this work was done before. So without Sigma, how was this done? And with Sigma, how has it changed things? Is it saving time? What are the benefits you're seeing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as I said, right, I would lie saying that, we couldn't do it in the past because we've been growing the business for 10 years, right? And like the planning function was already here way before, like from the beginning, right? Before we had any data infrastructure. The problem at the time was more like the time to insight and how like time consuming and manual work it was for like planning department to just extract data from systems, which it's tons of data, right? We have like millions of rows of data. So it was very, very time consuming for the team and like repetitive task, right? Very manual to just do this like year over year analysis and stuff like that. Well, I think what has been game changing for us since we are using Sigma, which also I think has been great, at least from my past experience with working with different BI tools, is that because Sigma has such this like look and feel of a Excel, right? Which so for my business stakeholders, I've seen a great adoption and the learning curve not as high or deep that it can be with other BI tool, for them to actually see the value they can get from Sigma and actually get hands-on and quickly build the query. And so right now, really like what has been game changing for us is the time to insight, right? Like they really quickly are able to pull the data they need within directly Sigma in your workbook function and start like constantly drilling down and do this year over year analysis. And something I haven't mentioned as well, but that is great because by experience, I know in the past it's been something very challenging. When you work with like in the retail industry, usually each department works based on different calendar, or not each department, but let's say the marketing department, usually they are more like focused on like the so-called like standard calendar, right? So you're just gonna have like January, February, March as we know it from the calendar. But then the retail or like the planning team, they're working based on the retail calendar. So it's like, it depends. Some companies, sometimes it's like 4-4-5. So January is 4 week, February 4 week, and then March 5 weeks, or sometimes it's like 4-5-4. But this is just to make sure you can always compare the calendar from one year to another. And historically, it's always been a challenge between departments to speak the same language because they were not necessarily looking at the same calendar in the same way. And so within Sigma, and I would say within our like cloud data warehouse, we created a dim calendar table that we call, where we have for each day like which planning calendar week it is compared to the standard calendar. So it makes it very easy for us between departments to switch from one calendar to another and to get a full alignment again for every department.
Yeah, very interesting. When you describe the problem the way you did, the operational challenges of different departments having to use different calendars and still talk about metrics in a very common way, like both might refer to year over year, but they're referring to years counted in different ways. That the operational complexity of that became very clear when you spoke about it. Thanks for clarifying that. So what's coming next in your data journey at Veronica Beard?
Yeah, so I mean, as I like to say to my business stakeholders, is that building a data infrastructure, it's never done. Obviously, I like to see it as a product, right? It's constantly ongoing, always more to build. Even sometimes, like when you switch to a new system, like you obviously need to revisit your transformation, etc. So it's very much an ongoing project. I'm pretty, and I would say very happy with where we are at after when I look at where we started like 2 years ago, and it's been a really amazing and exciting journey for us. But right now, like very near term and what we're really putting a lot of efforts in right now is getting all the wholesale data that I mentioned initially into our data warehouse. Once we have the wholesale data, we'll be able to onboard new departments, but also beyond that is for like the leadership team and company-wide, we'll be able to have this single source of truth and single place within Sigma where we can have full like a report on like net sales and all the key KPIs across the 3 sales channels. So this is very exciting and everyone is very much looking forward to that. So I would say it's very our like short-term focus right now. And after that, it's obviously gonna be about continuing like educating our business stakeholders around data, onboarding more departments, and just beyond that, also making sure, right, the usage keep growing internally of like getting more business stakeholders onboarded. And I think I really like to see it as like, obviously you want to, I would say you want to grow horizontally and vertically, right? So you want to have like more horizontally, more like business units. So I mentioned wholesale, but then the next one is gonna be, we're gonna have ops as well, onboarded, finance as well. So you want to grow horizontally, but also within each department, you want to have your viewer that become explorer, your explorer that become more power users. So that's like how we are planning to grow, like both horizontally and vertically.
Very interesting. So one thing that occurred to me when you were walking us through the kind of the analytical problems that the planning and merchandising teams try to solve is the importance of forecasting, because you have to plan ahead of time to know how many SKUs of what to order and ship to which location and constantly replenish it and all of that. So some things that we are excited about at Sigma are features that we are launching to enable customers to do that sort of forecasting in the product. So input tables is a feature that's coming out pretty soon that will hopefully help customers like you to do that. And we'll talk about it perhaps in another discussion in the future. I wanted to thank you for your time today with us. Let's see if there are any questions from the audience, and after that we can have Zack switch over and do the demo for retail.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So another quick plug for the questions tab. It's a little buried in the GoToWebinar interface, so there might be a little delay on them coming in. So as I go through this demo, everybody feel free to pop in any questions that you have for either Max or Jayanth, and I can actually move right over into a fun demonstration. Can you see my web browser?
Yes,
There we
we
go.
can.
So this is app.sigmacomputing.com. It could be /Veronica Beard. It could be / any one of our individual retail customers that we have in that space. So I think this will be fun. Let's pretend I'm somebody like Max 2 years ago in Sigma, and I've already connected to one of my cloud data platforms. So what I'm going to be getting started on is I'm actually going to navigate to some of my transactional data. And I'm like Max, but I work at Plugs Electronics. Plugs Electronics is a little less luxury than Veronica Beard. Think of us more like somewhere between a Best Buy and a TJ Maxx. But I have a similar situation where I have to analyze my individual retail sales. So what I have here, like Max was saying, this is kind of like a Kimball setup where I have my dimensions and facts, and maybe I've already done some transformation. I actually have this table pre-set up, already joined together, that I'm going to begin exploring. So this is 4.5 million rows, 19 columns, but that could just as well be a billion rows, 100 different column dimensions that help me work on my year over year, month over month, 445 schedule, anything else like that that I want to build into the dimensionality. And as I get started, one of the nice things I can do is immediately just do some data sanity checks. Use a hotkey here, check a column detail, and just make sure that, well, when it comes to price, let's just check really quick to make sure that all my values are in the positive. Would not want one of these coming up as negative. That checks out. And I can even do some quick formatting that cost should be in a $, price $, and I'm just going to do some quick agile calculations that show me what is quantity multiplied by the price column. So you see these are very Excel-like function bar calculations. That is going to be my revenue. And I'll do another column add here where this is going to be show me cost times quantity, and we'll call that cost of goods sold. So final calculation is just give me what is my revenue, new calculated column that I have, minus that cost of goods, and that'll be my profit. So one last data sanity check before I wrap up these ad hoc calculations, that hopefully my profit is always in the positive. We're not selling anything in Plugs Electronics that's not generating some actual value. So it looks like the weakest profit we had on an individual transaction was $4, and I can live with that for now. Where I typically get stuck though, is I've gone ahead, very rapidly added these calcs onto my table sitting within my cloud data platform. And no matter how much I clean this up or try to pre-prepare it, I know my business users might still just want to download it into Excel. But problem is it's 4.5 million rows. So what I'm going to try to do is outfox them and just drop this into a pivot table. So that 4.5 million rows, if I want to look at it by store region, I'm going to add that profit calculation and add a little conditional formatting to see where it pops the most. That's already something that I can take that governed data set, 4.5 million rows, and then tell my business user, hey, drill anywhere. Because unlike other traditional BI tools, Sigma allows the end user to just right click, drill down, and let's say they want to look into the Southwest, which is not doing so hot in terms of profit. Maybe they want to look at that by product family. And if I'm seeing we do most of our money in smartphones, maybe I drill again and I want to see that by individual store name. So what's great is I could drill essentially any which way into the dimensions that I've built into my cloud data platform. And in the back end, what's occurring is it's all staying live. And this is machine generated SQL code that's getting pushed down to its compute layer. So that's me drilling into Southwest, into smartphones, and that business user just needs to make pivot table like ad hoc calculations or spreadsheet familiar calculations to get into that row level detail. And that's just an example of a starting point. So Max, that's you 2 years ago, just getting started on Sigma. But maybe we build out a more advanced year-over-year flash report. So Plugs Electronics is still growing, and we're trying to meet our planned revenue. So I have my 2020 revenue plan and my revenue plan for 2021. And again, I find out that Southwest is our main offender. So I can click in and I can see how that breaks down for all my individual stores. And I could even see this Garfield store. They're kind of an aberration here that they did 232% over plan because for some reason they were only expected to do $200,000, whereas every other store was expected to do about 2.8 or 1.7. So, you know, row level detail like that within Sigma is always easy to just right click exclude. And that gives me a clear approximation that I'm 1.32% away from our plan for 2021. So if I want to hop over, I might want to do some inventory analysis. So these were the different metrics that become very important within retail, like sell-through, like days on hand inventory over time. And again, the Southwest is my prime offender, that they have the largest trend of days on hand inventory. That's also very evident in my geospatial visualization that they're doing 9.17 in turnover. These other states, New York has a much better turnover rate at 13 points. So I'm going to focus on the Southwest, and I'm going to expand this element because what I want to do is very similar to the previous drill anywhere in a pivot table. I want to focus on, well, show me this by the individual product families. See if there's any trend in the Southwest for what's staying on hand the longest. And what I get is a pretty obvious outlier, which is in party and celebration. So just clicking in a little bit further, this is where I find out that even at its peak level, I could get always into the row level detail here. I had party materials that stayed on the floor for 128 days. If I click into that, what was sitting on the floor? Beer pong tables. So I have an actual concern here that we maybe sold one in March. It's maybe the spring is breaking, but it looks like, again, we have beer pong tables that are sitting on the merch room floor. So what I'm going to do is take advantage of some of our collaborative capability. And I can tell Travis, who manages the actual retail stores in the Southwest, that please tell me you are not using beer pong tables as actual tables to store merchandise. And I'll let him get back to me on that a little bit later while I go ahead and click into see what else is happening within these Southwest stores. So a little further down, I have other very important metrics that I'm calculating, like days on hand inventory broken out into a pivot table. And again, let's see what inventory is ticking up in the Southwest. So similarly, I'm going to keep just that region. You know, look again at the product family names. And lastly, I see that we have a lot of hobbies and creative arts that are ticking up in terms of inventory by month. So again, drill anywhere. I want to see where it's at the peak and show it to me by the actual product names. And this shows me a pretty direct trend that of all of our products, we're racking up the most inventory with finger and hand symbols. So my concern at this point is that within these Southwest stores, don't stack finger hand symbols on top of beer pong tables in the back because you can't move them. I'm gonna let my manager know one more time. That should be enough to get him to pop in here into the same workbook where we can collaborate live And he can defend himself if that's not what's happening within the Southwest stories. He's a little bit more aligned to the field. He might know. But that way, we know that we're all looking at the same live governed data in the cloud data warehouse. We're not exporting into Excel. And we can work off the same version of the truth for some of these different calculations. And I know, Max, I'm going to call on you here real quick. This table is looking at it quarter over quarter. Very easy for me to truncate this down to month, week, day, year, hour. But that was the point you were making about how easy it was to start building out some different year-over-year calendars.
Yes, totally. I think what I want to share to the audience, like this demo you're going through, it's very much like I've been through that so many times. So it's really on point, like all these key metrics, on-hand inventory, obviously the sales, etc. But having this ability to quickly drill down from like zooming in and zooming out, like, in a very easy way, that's very much like what I love the most about Sigma, especially back then, like 2 years ago when I joined. Being first data hire, you have like so much to get familiar with when it comes to data, as like building the data infrastructure, but also reporting on data. And that's kind of where I felt like I got a superpower in a way with Sigma. It's because you are very quickly and easily able to like extract the insights from all the data that can seem like a huge amount initially, but have so much agility to leverage in Sigma.
Yeah, that drill anywhere capability, especially when you're working on very large data sets, is a major differentiator for us that we can actually tee that up for everybody. So checking some of the questions in the chat. One thing I have here is, Max, I think somebody was just curious if you could just kind of walk through one more time what your full modern data stack was. It was like, was it Fivetran to kind of?
Yeah, so we're using Fivetran for like the data pipelining, so it's extracting our data, and combined with Segment as our customer data platform as well, that we use also as our reverse ETL tool. And then we're using Google BigQuery as our cloud data warehouse, and dbt for like transformation. And then Sigma is obviously pulling the data from like the transform data from dbt, so directly in BigQuery. And an additional tool that I haven't mentioned, but we're using Continual. So it's continual.ai, and that's for like a machine learning operationalization. So we have hired a data scientist a couple months ago, and we're like leaning more and more toward like when it comes to like demand forecasting. We're doing like some very interesting work, I feel, around like mixed media modeling for like our marketing as well. So those are all like GeoLeaf testing as well. So these are all like different models that we're using. And then you need to operationalize that, so put them into production, and that's like a tool we're using for that. That is very well integrated with the modern data stack as well. So yeah, that's kind of our stack.
And you're saying that you're going to be moving out to pretty much a lot of different departments, but regardless of department, moving out kind of horizontally within the organization, it's always going to be BigQuery that you're housing that data as kind of your single source of truth?
Yes, it's that's really kind of the key objective here, is to have like this single source of truth. The only department that we're still like, it's for 2023, where like it's, we're still trying to figure out like how much we want to onboard them, and now is the finance department, because finance it's specific, it's its own department, in a way they have different needs, I would say, than most other departments. So there's definitely going to be data that they're going to pull from our data warehouse, but they might still use their own like financial planning tool. So that's kind of what we're like scoping out right now. But otherwise, all the other departments gonna be, yes, fully onboarded with our cloud data warehouse as the single source of truth.
All right. So I think that's it for some of the Q&A. I want to thank both of you for such an engaging conversation. For all our attendees, thank you for hopping on to the session. You'll get a recording afterwards if you want to review the actual demo or any of the fireside chat. promise that we're going to get fireplaces into the New York City office soon, so we can actually stick to that promise. And Max, Jayanth, any closing words, remarks?
I just wanted to thank Max for his time. Really enjoyed this conversation with you, Max, and also thank you to you, Zach, for the excellent demo, and more than anything, thanks to the audience for being here and giving us a listen.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm very excited with our continuous partnership.
Thanks, everybody. Take care now.
Bye.